Here we are. How's it going? I'm, man, this is the Mondayest Monday I've had in a long time. Boy, gosh, golly. I'm trying not to swear as much, can you tell? So, yeah, it's just been one of those Mondays. And I had people wanting a piece of me right up until a couple minutes before I started here. So, and I look unkempt, don't I? I just look unkempt, but that's okay. I'm an unkempt guy. I used a razor on my head today and I cut the back of it somewhere because there was blood in my hand after that. But, just the way it goes. It's Monday. I am, I'm glad to be back. It's been, I think my last interview was on the 3rd. So I haven't done interviews for a little while. I've been launching that Your Pod Guy thing that you're all seeing way too much of, and putting a lot of effort into that and rescheduling interviews that were already scheduled because somebody can't do it. So I'm going through that too. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about all the things I've got going on because I didn't organize anything today to do that. But I am, I'm happy to have this next guest on. He is, so he was actually introduced to me through Matt Napo, who has a wonderful daily podcast, sometimes twice a day, gosh, sometimes 3 times a day, that William's been on several times. And he said, you ought to have this dude on. And so I did a little internet stalking and learned a little bit more about him. And I am stoked to bring him up right now. It's William Conway. He won his first comedy contest in 2002, which coincidentally is his first time performing. So I want to talk about that a little bit. In 2007, he was convicted of robbery and spent nearly 10 years in prison. That gives you some life experience, doesn't it? After getting out, he returned to stand up and has been producing shows and winning more competitions ever since. It's William Conway. How you
Hey,
doing?
great. I'm doing fabulous after that intro. That's probably one of the best intros I've ever had, Scott. Thanks. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
I do my stalking as much as I can to be prepared for this, and that's what I got. So I want to go right to that comedy competition. That being at least nearly one of your first times on stage. Can you tell me how that came to be and how you want to, and just tell me all about it. I want to know the whole story.
Yeah, sure. No, it's a very interesting story because it sure don't happen every day. Um, it was literally the first time I ever went on stage to do comedy, and at the time, I just had a bunch of friends in my life. Because I mean, I partied all the time. I was always, I was. To be fair, at the time I was pretty drugged out, and I was still partying quite a bit. But
Mm-hmm.
I always made people laugh at these parties, and so people were pushing me. They were like, dude, you have to go try, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
so it was really the pressing of my friends that made me, and all I did is, and it was, so the Funny Bone in Sioux Falls, South Dakota was closing. And it was at the corner of Fifth and Phillips, and it was in the basement of the brewery there. And they were closing, and a new company was taking over. It was called Nitwits, and
Okay.
so they ran this open mic competition because they needed like house MCs for the new Nitwits Club. And so the open mic competition, whoever won that got put into the rotation, and the rotation ended up being about once every 5 weeks because
Mm-hmm.
there was like 5 house MCs. And once every 5 weeks, you would do a Wednesday show, a Thursday show, 2 shows on Friday, 2 shows on Saturday. You got paid $25 a show. You got a couple drinks for free every night that you performed, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so I went to this competition, and like I just went to the open mic, and then I get there and they say this competition. I'm like, okay, whatever, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like I have zero expectation of winning. And I went up on stage with like 2 or 3 stories that I told at parties that always just got people rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that that particular contest was running is they had three judges that picked a top three.
Mm-hmm.
And then those top three at the end of the night were brought on stage and they did like a crowd applause of who the winner out of those three were, which in
Uh-huh.
my opinion is the best way to do that.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Like in my opinion, I think that you need to have judges and you need to have the audience vote, because like otherwise it gets real murky. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? In my opinion.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I remember, so the headliner for that week was Kathleen Dunbar, and she was one of the judges. And I remember talking to her after the show, and she almost refused to believe that it was my first time on stage. She's like, and I forgot that this I bit the bullet that night. I was the first performer
Oh.
after like, yeah. So like it was my first time on stage and I bit the bullet
Yeah.
and I won. But to be fair, it was like I had no idea what I was doing. I had
Mm-hmm.
no idea what I was in for. Like I was thrown to the wolves, bro.
Yeah.
Like, like, like I had a vast learning curve coming quick.
Yeah. So thinking about those stories stories that you tell your friends that you bring on stage, it's almost like the experience of writing. It's almost like the experience of, putting together a set, and
Yeah.
you went up with those. Can you and I don't want you to do the set, but can you just give me kind of a like a Cliff's Notes of what those stories were and what kind of reaction you got?
Uh, I have no idea. Like, that was many drugs ago. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I have no idea what I did that first time. I wish I did. I wish I knew. I'd be doing it today, probably. You know what I mean? I'm not even gonna
Yeah.
lie. Like, why would I throw that away? Like, like for real. Like, no, and I tell you what, like in the early days, I did not understand the importance of recording everything. You
Yeah.
know, which I do now. Like now I record everything. I listen back to every set that I do because especially for my style, because like I can sit down and write, and I have sat down and wrote out bits. I used to do it all the time. And I'm pretty surgical with it. But to
Mm-hmm.
me, that's just not as fun for me on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can go up there and I can regurgitate the exact same thing the exact same way, and I can make people laugh. But that's not fun for me. You know
Right.
what I mean? And so I just kind of have a different approach these days. That's kind of outside the box of the norm.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I do definitely understand the benefits of sitting down and writing out sets. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
So you win this, and that gets you the MC spot, and you do your first MC gig. What was that like compared to doing the contest?
I mean, it all came. I've always been a pretty what God, it's such a simple word. I'm gonna be so mad that I can't remember it, but it's not. Um, like eccentric. I've always been like an eccentric people person. Oh, but like
Mm-hmm.
even when I was in high school, like I remember my junior year in high school, like we had an open period where it was like a common period. You could just hang out in the lunch area, and there'd be like three tables of teenagers just sitting around listening to me tell stories, because I
Mm-hmm.
was a new student from a different high school who had went to treatment already, who had already been through a bunch of stuff. Like I'd already been in my first shootout at that point. You know what I mean? So I had some crazy stories to be telling in high school, especially when you consider it was like a podunk high school in Northwest Iowa. You know what I mean? Like they're not used
Yeah.
to hearing stories like this. It was crazy. So like I literally for years had already had, groups of people, and like my whole idea of what the audience is like really allows me to just further that, because like I have no fear of the audience because the way I look at the audience is as a new extension of my friend group.
Mm,
These are just more of my friends that want to hear. They're here because they want to hear the stories that they've heard my other friends tell them that I tell. Like,
mm-hmm.
dude, you got to hear them. You know what I mean? Because that's how it always was. And when I look at them, when I take that mental perception of what the audience is this new extension of my friend group, it disarms them a whole lot, and
Mm-hmm.
and it makes me more comfortable, which they in turn feel. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And dude, like a lot of people, in my opinion, they come away from my shows, going, whoa, like I never saw that coming. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because
Right.
I talk about crazy, crazy stuff sometimes. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? I joke about suicide and all of that stuff. And at least directly to me, there's not a lot of people that complain about my comedy directly to me. I know I got
Mm-hmm.
haters, everybody's got haters, but like, I mean, it's I get the process. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like,
I was really I wrote this down. If you notice me writing stuff down, it's when I interview people, I get these little nuggets that I want to keep with me, and I keep a notebook of that, and the ones I was writing you notes on before. But you said the audience is a new extension of my friend group, so I've never heard it put that way before. So I hear comedians say it's me against the audience, and I've heard comedians say it's my job to be the court jester to make them laugh and stuff like that. But actually, I guess trusting the audience enough to tell them, your deepest, darkest secrets and make it funny is really extending them as part of your friend group. And that's a really unique way of looking at it. And we all have to find our way of connecting with the audience when we get up there. And
right,
myself, I'm a much more guarded person. They only get like a third of who I really am when I'm up there because I don't want them to know the rest.
right.
And
Yeah, no, I undress pretty fully. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
For real.
right.
I
And
get pretty
the
naked
fact
on
that you
stage.
do that, I think is probably, what makes the audience be on your side pretty quick into the set, I would imagine.
Right. Well, and I think too is that so I have learned that like talking about my robbery early on in the set to a crowd that doesn't know me can be off-putting. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, and I've learned things like that. I've learned that they have to know that I'm not that guy because like, so I joke a lot about the tragedy of my life because Mark Twain said that tragedy plus time equals comedy. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? And George Carlin said that you can make anything funny by taking one aspect of it and stretching it beyond belief.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unfortunately, my childhood was tragically beyond belief. And so I could pretty much just go up there and tell real stories and people laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And really the way I started being more real in my stories was because so I joke about only having one testicle.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started coming back to comedy, I told about 4 or 5 different stories on how I lost it, and none of them were true. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? But one of the stories I told was involved my sister, and my sister got mad at me. She like
Mm-hmm.
texted me, and she was like, "What is this joke?" And I'm like, exactly that. It's a freaking joke. Like it's not supposed to be something that's believed. You know what I mean? Like,
Uh-huh.
and but I was like, okay, well, if everybody wants me to get honest, I'll get honest. And then I started talking about some of the real stuff, and then my whole family stopped talking to me basically. Uh, like, but it was kind of a mutual decision because I was like, I'll be honest, like I came up in a family full of secrets, and as I learned more and more, it's a pretty prevalent thing. I think every family has secrets. Every family has skeletons in their closet. But my family was especially secretive and swept everything under the rug and didn't talk about things, and like the abuses were like astronomical,
Mm-hmm.
and so like I've pretty much come to a place in my life where anybody who doesn't want to admit that these things happened or whatever, I have no time for you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like because that's it when you invalidate things that actually took place, and like it's so offensive to me that to me it's intolerable anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not a huge loss on my part, in my opinion, although Matt Napa would disagree. He tells me that I should reconnect with my family all the time.
That's all right. I'm just connected with some of mine too. So
Yeah, I mean,
just,
it's
just the way it is.
for now.
Yeah. Yeah. So thinking about the robbery. I mean, you do a great bit on it from the tape you sent me at Snow Jam. The
Thank you.
robbing a flower shop and all that went with it. Um, I mean, it makes for great material, but it really fucked up your life. I mean,
Super bad. I mean, okay, yes and no is what I'm gonna say to that.
uh-huh,
Because I'm gonna say something that is a little bit controversial, I'm sure, but I mean, prison was the best thing that could have happened to me.
uh-huh.
Um,
So expand
I
on that. Tell
I
me why.
sure, I needed prison. Because so I mean, my childhood was incredibly messed up, and pretty much everything I learned about how to deal with people was wrong. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like what I was taught and what I saw around me, like my world perceptions were just super whacked.
Mm-hmm.
And like for years of my life, for my teenage years and into my early 20s, like I did whatever I wanted to do in a moment, and if you had something to say about it, we could fight right now. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like I was a dirt bag kind of person. I was a drain on society for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like I I pretty much had no redeeming qualities. Like by the time I went to prison and started taking a look back, I honestly had to ask myself how I had a single friend,
Mm-hmm.
because my character was that low.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't. But in like, and I'll say this till I die. In my defense, at that point, I didn't really know any better. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Because who the hell was there to teach me? Because the
Yeah.
people that were there to teach me were, uh, being, they, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but it was nasty, nasty stuff, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so, um, I remember when I got sentenced by Joseph Nealis, he said to me that what he saw in me concerned him greatly. And what he saw in me was he saw the evolution of crime, is the way
Mm-hmm.
he put it. And what he meant by that is he said you go long periods of time without being arrested, but every time you're arrested for something worse than the time before, which leads me to believe not that you go long periods of time without committing crimes, but that you're out there committing crimes all of the time and we're just not catching you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a sentence to help you understand that this is not how you want to live your life.
Mm-hmm.
And those words hit me like a dagger to the chest, bro.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then I got sent to prison and I went through the processing. And at the end of that processing, um, based on like factors like my growing up, my substance abuse, my criminal history, they determined that my projected recidivism rate, which means that within, I think, 5 years, within 5 years of going back to prison, this is the likelihood. Within 5 years of being released from prison, this is the likelihood that I'll go back to prison. And my projected recidivism rate was 95%.
Wow.
And I was I was so mad when that lady told me that. And I remember sitting up in my chair and pointing to the paper on her desk. And I said, I don't care what that piece of paper says. I'm never coming back here. You
Uh-huh.
know what I mean? Now you can say that all you want, but now that meant I had to change. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a long, hard road out of hell, bro.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
So I've never been to prison, but it sounds like your time in there, it was nearly 10 years. It was like nine and a
yeah,
half, right?
I did 9 years,
Um,
9 months.
so you came out of it with a clearer picture of the person you're supposed to be than when you went in. What was it about being inside that taught you that? If you're not getting it from your parents, you're not getting it from anybody in your family. What did being inside do for you that you're able to get on a podcast now instead of going out and committing crimes?
Right, right, for sure. So for one, I took advantage of every program that I could.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there was a class, I was taking it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I want to take a second to say. At least in the system I was in, I can only speak for the South Dakota Department of Corrections and the experience that I had there. Um, People will tell you that rehabilitation is not available, and that's not true. They don't hand it to you on a silver platter. If
Mm-hmm.
you want to be rehabilitated in the South Dakota Department of Corrections, you got to go get it. You got to go after it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, dude, I was at the school trying to get in classes that I shouldn't have been able to get into. I got involved with the Alternatives to the Violence Project, which was a totally voluntary program that was brought in by outsiders that wasn't even like associated with the prison. I got involved in church stuff, and faith-based stuff, which I highly recommend, no matter what your faith is. You know what I mean? Like I think it's very important for people to have something to believe in and call on. You know what I mean? Because without faith and hope, there's not a whole lot of chance for change. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Because you just get stuck. Because for a long time, I had this idea in my head that this is just the way I am
Mm-hmm.
and I can't help that. But, and really, I think it was the things I learned in AVP about like how to change my core beliefs and stuff like that, and understanding, the misconceptions. I had to learn, why, it became like I had to understand it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I had to understand why I was the way I was,
Mm-hmm.
and once I came to that place of understanding, it freed me to not feel guilty anymore, to not feel hateful anymore. You know what I mean? That place of
Mm-hmm.
understanding just allows me to be and move on.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was very active in 12-step groups inside. I started the aftercare program on the hill in Sioux Falls. Like I mean, I was doing everything I could because um I knew that's what it took. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like because like while there were a lot of bad things in my childhood, like I still remember like coaches and stuff from middle school and high school who, if you want something in this life, you got to put in the work no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there's nothing in this life that really gets handed to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and so and you got to learn what that work is, how to do it correctly, and the whole thing about success is there's a lot of different ways to measure success. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like some people will say that I'm not a successful comedian. And I think that there's certainly a lot of argument for that. It's not like I've ever put out a special, although I certainly have the ability to or whatever, but I've
Mm-hmm.
just never like I haven't had the opportunity to do it in the way that I want to do it, which is what's super important to me. To me,
Mm-hmm.
it's not important to get a special out there so that everybody can see me. Like when I finally do a special, I want to do it in the way that I want to do it, and I don't want people telling me how it's going to go or whatever. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't care about that. But I'll tell you this. I grew up in a town of less than 4,000 people in northwestern Iowa, and I can tell you for a fact that there are people in multiple states that have T-shirts with my face on it, which is something that's something that nobody in my hometown ever thought I would do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it matters on how you measure success. To me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a success just because I'm out and actually pursuing what I love and what I dream. And you know, it could be a lot different for me in a lot of different ways, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not. You know what I mean? Like the numbers said all this different stuff about me, but that's not the way it is. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? And so to me, I feel pretty successful for the most part.
Yeah.
And like in my low times, and thank God for my wife, because like, dude, my wife is like my rock. She lifts me up when when I'm really hurting. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And she helps me in ways that she doesn't even realize because this journey of being an artist, any kind of artist, you know what I mean? It's tough. And it's especially tough when you're in the levels that aren't making a whole lot of money, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so I'm very grateful to the people in my life, especially my wife, and especially like some of the comedy people, like Matt Napo has been amazing to me.
Mm-hmm.
When I was really early on in my career, Dante the comic was a mentor of mine and was really there for me.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan Holtz in Sioux Falls, when I first started coming back to comedy, was an amazing dude and really helped plug me in. Like he helped me get plugged in right away because when I first started doing shows again after prison, then like, and I waited like 2 years after I got out. But when I first started doing shows again after I got out of prison, my first couple mics, Nathan Holtz was putting me on showcases immediately because you know
Mm-hmm.
they could tell I was seasoned already. But
Mm-hmm.
I also did like 3 or 4 shows during the last like 18 months of my prison stay because word finally got out that I had done comedy, and so that kind of became a thing. So
Yeah.
I did comedy in prison, which was a weird experience.
Yeah,
But
I wanted to talk about that a little bit because you mentioned that one of the things that really kind of sparked the desire to get back into it when you got out was that roast you did of
yeah,
one of the guards. Was it a guard or a trustee
no,
or?
it was Jim Halsey. He was the cultural activities coordinator
Okay.
in Springfield for like 30 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
And their job is basic, like they do a lot, they handle a lot of the religious activities, and they also do like that person, that position is probably the most involved person with helping keep inmates connected with their families. Like that
Mm-hmm.
cultural activities coordinator position is a very, very important position. And Jim Halsey had done it for decades, and everybody loved that dude. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody, inmates and staff alike, like you couldn't find somebody to say a bad word about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were doing a retirement party, and they, for the first time ever, they were going to do a party in the visit room, and inmates and staff could all go to it. And the guy that was organizing the party decided that he wanted to roast Halsey because that's how inmates show love.
Mm-hmm.
and and everybody that he talked to just kept saying my name. And so this dude literally comes to me on a Friday evening Now, I haven't done anything to do with comedy in like over 8 years.
Mm,
Like, it's been a minute since I jogged my comedy brain.
yeah.
And this guy says, well, I want to do this roast of Halsey. And I was like, well, how long are you thinking? He's like, 20 minutes. I'm like, well, when is it? He's like, Wednesday afternoon. I was like, yeah, you don't want much, bro. You know what I mean? Like, sure, sure. Let's do that. And so I realized, for one, I got my ego out of the way and I realized what I was asked to do.
Mhm.
And I understood that, listen, like we can do a lot of softballs and layups and because the idea is we want everyone to just have a really good time.
Mhm.
So like as a comedian, I don't like the performance wasn't very artistic. You know what I mean? But it
Yeah.
was hilarious and it slayed and Jim loved it. And like he still has the tape. Like I've heard from people that he kept they recorded it and I wish I could get a copy of that now that I should
Yeah.
try and connect with him on that. But yeah, he listens to it and it was a beautiful thing. But it
Mhm.
was really weird to do it for the officers' Christmas. That was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like
I had a buddy do a show up in Valparaiso, Indiana, and I think he showed up pretty stoned. I mean, it was just pot, but he was pretty high, and he didn't know it, but it turned out it was like a police fundraiser. So
yeah,
and
man.
it all went fine. It was no big deal, but it was just funny. He just said that he was taken aback a little bit when he did that show, and yeah, it's funny. Um, so I don't want to belabor the whole prison thing, but one of the things that I look at in people, it's the generational passing down of bad behavior.
Right.
So and like you said a couple times, you didn't know any better because you lived in an environment that didn't teach you any better. So
Right.
coming out of prison, did you have a little bit more empathy for your family in understanding where they were coming from, or
I
or
mean,
or do you still have a chip on your shoulder?
so both just so we're clear, both of my parents have now passed on. My
Mm,
dad died on my birthday in 2020, and my mom passed away in 2021.
mm,
She died of COVID. I did reconcile with my father while I was in prison.
mm,
And the way that came to be is because like you know my dad was super abusive for a long time, but it is definitely fair to say that his abuses were certainly attached to his drinking.
mm,
And not fully like because like he stopped hitting us when I was like 13 and he was probably like 18 months sober, but that was also because I hit him. That was when I hit him back, but like when he stopped drinking, at least a lot of the super bad behaviors ended.
mm,
And even when I was like 18 or 19, he would call me up like once a week and or once every couple weeks and invite me out to lunch. And I would go to lunch because it was a free lunch, you know what I
mm,
mean? And I would like berate him the whole time. And he tolerated that. And like he never left or anything like that. He just took it. And
mm,
then, when I got to prison, I remember when I was in jail, I wrote my dad a letter and I was like, and it was a nasty, nasty letter, bro.
mm,
Like it was full of like, I bet this just makes you so happy. This is what you always wanted from me. It was toxic. It was super,
mm,
super toxic. And then I think I was in prison probably about 3 years. And like when I would call home to talk to my mother, if dad answered the phone, I would ask for mom. And if he tried talking to me, I would be like, yeah, I just want to talk to mom. Like I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
even give him an ear. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And I pulled that for like the first 3 years I was in prison. And then one day my mom said to me when she came to the phone after I had done the same old, she said, you know, if you only knew how much he prayed for you.
Mm.
And it broke my heart, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It cut me to the core to think about my dad praying for me to get better,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um and that was our road back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's good that you were able to, I, you know, if nothing else, the time inside gives you a lot of time to reflect and try to understand things better. And, you know, I'm
Right.
glad that you came out of it like that. So I want to get in, I'm going to move away from that. I want to get into the fact that you are a guy. So, and you've alluded to this, you are a guy that could, could be a scary looking dude. And yet when you get on stage,
Right. I'm sorry.
even though you've got big energy and stuff up there, I don't feel like, you know, and I'm watching tape, you know, I'm not there live, but it doesn't seem like you really scare people. And I don't know. So on the same token, I am also a guy that could be seen as a scary looking dude. I'm a giant, and you know, I don't smile a lot, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I do frighten people sometimes. And yet when I saw you up there, it just seemed like you were instantly able to disarm them and get them on your side. Is that something conscious that you know how you're doing it, or is it just something magical that happens when you go up there?
So I mean, my for one, thank you. My stage presence is probably the thing I get complimented on the most.
Mm,
Because yeah, for and you're probably going to be surprised to know, especially early on, not as bad nowadays, but gosh, in those early days, like the first 2 or 3 years, like I would be an absolute ball of nerves on the inside. Like
mm,
inside, I am just I'm freaking
yeah.
out. I'm questioning every joke I've thought about telling, you know, and I'll say this. So that to me, atmosphere means a lot in comedy.
Mm,
And one of the things I'll say about Nitwit's Comedy Club was the club atmosphere was phenomenal in that building, even though it was a small, cramped brick basement room.
mm, mm,
Like what they did with that atmosphere was great. And one of the greatest benefits I had is that when I would go on stage, the lights were absolutely blinding. You couldn't see anybody right away. And then after a few minutes, you can see like the first 2 rows well. You know what I
mm,
mean? And by then you've already got a couple jokes and laughs under your belt. And so seeing them wasn't such a big deal.
yeah.
But like, you know, again, I go back to my perspective on the audience just allows me to go like when those lights hits me, it's time. This is just
Mm,
the now we do what we do. Like
mm,
now it's time to tell the stories. You know, this is
right.
why I'm here. This is why they wanted to see me. You
Yeah.
know, like I mean, to me, I guess it's all mental preparation. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like
So you're definitely a unique storyteller. You know, I would compare you to like a Ron White or something like that in
thank you.
that vein. Um, and that's a hard thing to get into and succeed at
Yeah,
because
I know.
if you don't, if your story's not compelling enough to keep them along for the ride, to the punch or any tags that you come up with, you lose them. And I just did an open mic where another comic came up and said, "You had me, you lost me. You had me, you lost me." And and I was glad she said that because I needed to know because it was the first time I'd told it. But in thinking about that, it's when you get into a comedy community and you've got these people you see a lot, you know, when you're small markets, big markets, you see the comics a lot. What was the best and worst advice you got when you started and even through the years?
Well, Chris Porter, I opened for him one week when he was coming through Nitwits. And he found out through conversation that I had one testicle, which at that time I did no jokes about whatsoever because I just didn't want to do that. You know what I mean? But when he heard me say that, he stopped and he was like, "Wait, you have one testicle?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "And you don't use that in your act?" And I said, "No, why would I do that?" And he was like, "Dude, that's gold." And he was fucking right. Because like, I'm not kidding you, bro. Like, it is a rare occasion when a one nut joke doesn't land. And I don't know why that is. I don't know. Like, and it almost doesn't even matter what I say about having one testicle. It's going to get a laugh. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But it's definitely true. I've done it. I've seen it a number of different times. You know what I mean? But and they eat it up, and I love it. It's fun. You know what I mean? It's funny because I'll tell you what. One of my most favorite things early on that happened to me. I was living in Sioux Falls. This has got to be like 2003 or so, right before I moved to LA, and then we're in a Hy-Vee grocery store, and there's this guy in the aisle that sees me, and he shouts. He's like, "Hey, aren't you that one nut comedy guy?" And I was with my son's mother, and if she could have crawled into the shelves, she would have, because like she was so embarrassed, and I was so proud, and it was just a beautiful moment. You know what I mean? Like,
oh man, how about the worst advice you ever got?
Man.
And Chris Porter is excellent, by the way. I just saw him here.
Oh, I love him. He's so good. He's so good. Yeah. He's really funny. I don't know if there is bad advice. I'm going to be honest with you because it's all about what you take away from it or whatever. You know, it's really easy, especially with comedians. It's really easy to get advice from somebody and it cuts you a little bit. And my suggestion is learning how to not let that happen, because like in Sioux Falls, from my experience, had one of the most nurturing comedy scenes that you could have. Like they meet together for writing sessions with each other. You know, they bounce jokes off of each other. Like they're very interactive in their bookings with each other. You know, like they do what they can to lift the whole scene. Like there doesn't seem, at least when I was there didn't seem to be anybody that was like trying to push themselves above all others. And when you have that kind of scene, it's a really, really good thing. And it opens you up for constructive criticism and it makes it easier to accept. So, I mean, you know, I've had advice I didn't like or whatever. Like I used to do, well, and I still do sometimes, a bit about going to a buffet with my family, like, you know, like the whole herd or whatever. And when I first started doing that bit, I would say that we went to the Chinese buffet, and during the joke, I would impersonate the manager with a Chinese accent. And people said to me that it was offensive to do that. Which I'm going to be honest with you, I don't necessarily understand that. for the simple fact of I haven't been to a lot of Chinese restaurants that didn't have a Chinese manager.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you can explain the logic and getting mad to me about it being racist rather than just true, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, it's not like I was doing the accent to be racist. We went to fucking China Buffet. That was a real restaurant. That's
Uh-huh.
kind of like what the guy actually fucking sounded like, you know.
Yeah.
But because I didn't want to ruffle feathers, I switched it to Golden Corral, which we didn't have in most of the area that I performed in.
Yeah.
You know, so to me, you know, like I changed the joke, and I wish that, you know, that was like probably the first time that I ever succumbed to somebody telling me how I should talk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily like how it made me feel in the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah. It's funny. I had one that I portrayed myself as my wife's gay roommate, and I thought that could be offensive. So I just changed up to I'm gay. That was the punchline. And that turned out to be the offensive thing. And fortunately somebody told me, and I was able to go back to the original way I did it, but I was second guessing my own punchline, and I didn't need to. But yeah, I've gotten some great advice, and I've gotten some that wasn't so good. So we are at a point. This is my favorite part of the show now. That I feel so stupid that I didn't come up with 3 years ago when I started it. But it's called "Is This Anything?" And this is where we both bring a joke or a premise or something that we feel like it might be funny, but we're not 100%, and we just give each other notes. If you don't have one ready, that's cool. I do. But since you're the guest, you get to choose if I go first or you go first.
Oh, I mean, let's have you go first, so I have a good, solid example.
Okay. So this one I actually wrote yesterday when I went on a hike. This is one. Okay. One of my favorite things to do when I'm hiking is carve my name in trees, but I do it a little bit different. You know how everyone puts the date on their little carvings? I do too, but I carve a future date. And I include an ominous message. Like today, I carved SJC 11529 and fight the AI. That should make everybody on the trail a little unsettled.
Yeah.
And
that's beautiful. That's great. And that's good stuff too, man.
Yeah.
There's so many trail walkers around here, man. You've given me a golden idea.
Yeah.
because like I'm super mischievous like that. I'm very much like Jim Morrison. I like to push the boundaries of society like as much as I possibly can sometimes. And like freaking people out like that. That's beautiful. That's good stuff.
Yeah. It was funny because we went past one of those trees where everything was carved, and I was like, what if somebody carved a future date? How would people react to that? And then I'm vacillating between the AI or fight the machines, or the machines have risen, or something like that. Something that is relatable today.
Right.
But yeah,
the fight the AI I think is really good because it's such a hot topic right now.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try that at a mic and see how it lands. But I thought, yesterday was one of those days I didn't want to think about anything, and of course we're out hiking and a joke jumps in my head, and I couldn't let it go. I took out my phone and put future date. That's the only thing I wrote on my phone was future date. And then I wrote the joke, and I did it for a writers group last night, and I thought they were okay with it too. So I'll give it a shot.
Right. Yeah, no, I think the crowd will enjoy it.
Yeah. So what you got for me?
So this is actually, I want to give you one. I tried this joke on stage one time. Okay. And it's not so much a joke as it is a story, as are most of my things. But I want to preface this with the crowd reaction that I got from the one time was like not just crickets, but almost shock and awe. Like a lot of
Okay.
gape jawed people looking at me like, what in the hell? And
Yeah.
then
You could feel the
there
air
was,
suck out of the room.
yeah. And then
I've done
at
that
the
too.
same time that was happening, there was one table of three guys that were practically on the floor laughing.
Uh,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So like it's one of those things where okay, the masses may not like this, but I don't know, it's still pretty freaking funny because these guys almost peed themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was a young man. I was like 18 and I was living with my girlfriend. And one day before work, she starts to give me a blowjob.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting kind of pressed for time or whatever. And so I'm like, hey baby, you gotta hurry this up. I gotta go to work. And she just stopped. She's like, go ahead. And I'm like, no. Like you can finish, but I need to get going. No, just go. And so she just leaves me hanging. And after admitting, like she'd been working on it quite a while too, by the way. That factors in. You know what I mean? And I had to walk to work, which was like a 4-block walk to work. So like now I get to work and I'm really in pain. I'm in a lot of like, it hurts. It literally hurts. Right. So I get to work now at where I work for a telemarketing service, a devil type of telemarketing service. I will say, like they were a terrible, terrible company. They ripped off people real bad. Like it's terrible that I worked there, to be honest. Like that company was the reason that they made so many telemarketing laws. Like for real. Like they were up to all of that stuff. But anyway, so because I am often mischievous and do things I shouldn't, I had been ostracized from the entire calling floor, and they had me in my own row way off on one end of the calling floor. I was all by myself. And so because I was ostracized the way I was and I was in pain the way I was, and I figured nobody's coming around here to see what I'm doing. I can't like just take a break and go to the bathroom because they're going to get on me about not being on the phone. And so I'm calling Discover Card members on behalf of American Bankers Life and American Bankers Insurance Company of Florida. How you doing today, sir? You know, and it really bothered people. Cause I think I just went too far and emulated because I emulated the whole coming and wiping it with Kleenexes on my desk. It horrified most of the people in the room. But some guys thought it was really, really funny.
Yeah. So I don't think it's that, outside of the norm. I mean, I've heard things similar to that. So the only thing I would do is when you're explaining the telemarketing company, if you don't have anything that is just like hilarious as a tag, I would just say, I worked at a telemarketing company, and because of my antics there, I was ostracized and they put me in a corner by myself. And then when you're talking to somebody on the phone, you gotta, I would come back to the fact, okay, I'm still fully engorged and I got to do something about this. Right. So I get this lady on the phone and the first thing I ask is, what are you wearing? And so you sound nice.
I think it'd be better. I think it'd be better if it was a guy, especially today.
Yeah. And you could, I would role play that conversation a little bit more. Yeah, instead of jumping right from being on the phone to coming to cleaning it up. I would actually take that conversation and make that something of a joke inside the joke, you know, because
Right.
you could get a ton of tags off that. I
You
mean,
know,
you're
I could
supposed to be
probably,
selling insurance or whatever, and you know, you start talking about, man, you smell good from here, you know,
right,
that type
right.
of stuff, and so that
Yeah.
you can actually get enough of a picture in your mind to finally stop the blood flow to your cock, you know?
Yeah. Dude, I think you know what? Like as you were, I really didn't think about this until just now when the joke, like a lot of times, you know, you try and think, okay, you know, I got to get to the funny quick, but like you made me think of expanding this so much because like I have a lot of other telemarketing stores.
Mhm.
I could probably do a whole hour just on working at that place
Yeah,
and like
yeah,
everything that happened because it was like when you said like things about the telemarketing company that were bad, like um I remember one time I made a lady cry. Like I badgered her like on sales. I
uh-huh,
badgered her to the point where she started crying and she gave the phone to her husband.
uh-huh.
And I sold the husband while hearing his wife cry in the background. So it was one of those kind of places.
Yeah,
Like I remember the quality assurance lady was like, "You can hear her crying." I'm like, "Yeah,
mhm,
but now I'm talking like because we were arguing about whether or not it was going to pass on
uh-huh,
tape verification because you know because but I'm like, listen, they don't know on the tape why his wife is crying. You know because you were monitoring my calls. I rebutted her 9 times. You know
uh-huh.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
like, so they don't know that. She could be crying about what she sees on television. You know what I
uh-huh.
mean? So, like,
So, you
yeah, it
know,
was just
that would be, you know, and I can talk about joke writing like for hours, but the fact that you've got the blowjob joke, and you have to set the scene on where you work.
right.
You could have a couple decent tags about the telemarketing thing and the joke, and then, man, I got to tell you more about this telemarketing job, you know, just
Right.
almost like
Yeah.
a callback, and
Yeah.
then go into that one. So you know,
Yeah.
they're a nice package, they go together, the
Hmm.
transition's perfect. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
you've definitely got something there, and yeah, just make sure you've got enough tags along the way that keeps people leaning in.
Right. Get the
Yeah.
chuckles in there.
Yeah,
You
but yeah,
know,
that's
one of the things that very first night when I won that contest, one of the things that Kathleen Dunbar told me because she knew, like, after talking to me, she knew I didn't know anything. And now I had this job about how to do comedy. And she told me to get this book. It was like stand up comedy, the book. I forget who wrote it. Um, but that really taught me that book really taught me how to take an audience on a ride. You
mhm,
know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, I'm very much a believer in like I'm not a heavy hitter. Like my laughs per minute does not tick the way that most people want it to.
Mhm,
But at the end of my show, you're going to be glad you came. You're going to be surprised you didn't hear about me before if you hadn't heard about me. You know what I mean? Like,
mhm,
and so as long as those things remain true, I don't really care about my laughs per minute.
mhm,
But I do definitely like the value of having the chuckles along the way. If you don't have the chuckles along the way, then the payoff is never really as big.
mhm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's, and I used to, and you're too young to remember these guys, but I used to watch a show called Two Ronnies, and it was a British TV show. And one of the things, that one of the Ronnies, I think it was Ronnie Corbett, would tell a story at the end of the show. And the funny thing is his stories would start out one place, and then they would branch out into all these different things, but then he'd bring them all back together at the end. And
Yeah.
the it wasn't a big laughs per minute thing. It was, and that's the way British comedy is. But you're on the edge of your seat because you know what his style is, and you don't know how he's going to be able to bring it back around. It's like watching a TV show with 15 different plots. How are they going to
Yeah,
tighten this up and
yeah,
make a good ending out of it? It was kind of like that, and that's what I like about storytellers that can do that, and it's so intricate. It's hard. It's really hard to do that and keep people with you during that time. But yeah,
right,
I think your joke's got legs. I think I keep trying it and
right,
and try to get to the point where everybody or most people laugh instead of three.
right,
A
right.
lot of my
Yeah.
jokes do that too. But yeah, this has been a fun talk. Where can people find you if they want to get you online?
I'm on Facebook, William Conway on Facebook. I do have a Conway Comedy Facebook page, but to be honest, my William Conway page is actually uh, got way more traffic
Yeah.
because they gave me digital creator status, which kind of switched things up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really need to learn, and I need to figure out technology because that's part of why I don't do as well because technology is still very confusing to me.
Yeah.
Um, I don't even want to know how much money I have on like from online videos and views and stuff
Uh-huh.
that don't have access to because
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. That's a
Like
lot.
it,
I feel you. Yeah,
but
it's a lot.
and
Yeah.
then William Conway on my YouTube is just my name. I'm sitting at like 84 subscribers right now. So if we
Uh-huh.
could go over 100, that'd be fantabulous.
Yeah,
Like
that's great.
I'd be ecstatic. But like this year it will be harder this year to find me doing comedy stuff because I am focusing more on music right now.
Hmm.
But I'm definitely still gonna do some shows. And then I'm on Coffee with the Dog with Matt on a fairly regular basis. I'm gonna be co-hosting that tomorrow with Carl Mann. We're gonna be stepping in for Matt.
Hmm.
So Coffee with the Dog for sure. Check that out because I'm on that quite a bit until Matt gets tired of me.
Yeah, cool. Matt won't get tired of you. He's cool.
No, yeah, he's awesome. He's
Yeah.
one of my favorite people.
Yeah, excellent. Well, it's been great getting to know you, and I really appreciate you being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure on this end for sure.
Yeah, great. Thanks. And I got to stop recording.